Hey, what's up guys? Shuckleking here, bringing you another Power Rankings video. This is for Pokemon Generations League. I haven't done this in a while. I did it for WBE, and I've done it for leagues that I've been in. So it's definitely going to be pretty cool to try it out for a different league. And honestly, I don't think I know anybody in this league outside of Meme who reached out to me. Really nice guy. So yeah, no, I always love doing these Power Ranking stuff, seeing what cool ideas people have to bring into teams, maybe give me some motivation or maybe some ideas to try and test out some cores myself on any potential future draft leagues I do. But yeah, anyway, this is Pokemon Generations League. They're going, I believe this is the 7th season, so they've been going at it for a pretty decent amount of time. And they also have a YouTube channel. Now, they don't post a whole lot on there, but make sure you definitely go check out their content. And if you guys don't know who I am, well, I'm Shuckleking87 here, coach of the OK-Rilla Boomers. My draft league credentials, I think a lot of people regard me as probably the most consistent and best Wi-Fi draft league player out there. I still not sure if that's the case, especially like Wolfie or Joey or MV. They're also really, really great players, but they have been playing a whole lot of draft, and I've played a decent amount of Wi-Fi leagues, and I've made playoffs every single Wi-Fi season and won about 50% of them. I think I have 3 or 4 championships out of 6, so pretty okay success rate there. And my most recent season was NCP. Unfortunately, I lost in playoffs to Matt O'Shea, but I did help out a lot with my good friend 6 Foot Hacks, and he was able to win the championship. So I kind of count that as a win for me. And I'm also doing TBL. Now, that's kind of on a hiatus right now, actually. If you guys didn't see 6 Foot Hacks' video, we probably will have to step out of this. And honestly, my computer is just so crappy. The charging port on my computer just doesn't work. So honestly, probably when I make this video and upload it and all that, I'm probably going to send this computer out. So it probably was best that I was going to step away for draft league for a little bit, got my computer fixed, ready to go for some pretty cool leagues we got going into Shining, Pearl, Brilliant, Diamond, something like that. I think I mixed up those names. That's okay. That kind of goes to my brand about me not caring. But anyway, yeah, Pokemon Generations League. You got some really interesting teams here. Their format is honestly pretty standard. There's no Dynamax. It's 10 Pokemon, 1,000-point budget, and it's 200 to 20-point mons. Now, I kind of look at this as generally tiers without any tiering restriction. So you could call it 10 mons for 10 points each, just cut off a 0, and then it's based on 2 to 10 points per mon. So when I see that means the 200-point mons or 20-point mons out of 100 or 20% of your budget. That's a pretty big percentage. Usually, and generally in showdown leagues I feel like the most expensive mons that are 17, 18 points are about 1/6. Maybe even a little bit less than that of your total budget. So 1/5 of your total budget is definitely a pretty big amount. So you're not going to be getting as quote-unquote broken teams in this format. There's a little bit less points going around, but I feel like we still have some really, really great teams, even with that a little bit more careful consideration about spending your points in this league. Shadow Tag is banned. Probably makes sense because Regieleki plus Gothitelle is just so good. Baton Pass is Dry Pass, and no Clangor Soul on Como. There were a couple things I saw of note when I was looking at their rule set. So this is the draft order, as we can see here, and just the teams at just a quick overall glance. Now, they made some immediate transactions, so I did not consider those immediate transactions in my I did not consider them in my power rankings. So if they changed their team up a tiny bit, so be it. There's one team that made a change a couple days ago, and when I wrote out my power rankings, I had different considerations. I don't think I think it made the team slightly worse, but otherwise, there's not really many considerations in terms of changes there. You can take a look at their tier list. Again, shout outs to Otto for listening to me and opening this website up, which is great to make it public. But anyway, so you see your 200-point tiers. You have Darmanitan, Dragapult, Mew. I think Dragapult and Mew, 100% worth it. Darmanitan, not worth it. That's going to be pretty rough. Darmanitan, you just have to have a lot of support. And if you saw my NTP run, Darmanitan was my 4th overall pick. So it's definitely a really good mon. If it was in a 16-point tier, I would definitely get it. 18-point tier, I'd probably be hesitant about it, but 20-point tier is honestly a lot. Just things to note, Melmetal, I think it's a pretty good mon. For 18 points out of 100, I think it's definitely worth picking up. Same with Necrozma, Victini. All three of those mons I would definitely consider at free agency. Maybe the teams I have ranked lower, I would consider maybe picking those mons up. Zeraora's a little bit on the iffy side. The speed is just so nice, but it's definitely not as strong with that Z move. So I can see that not being drafted. Anything else? I think Galar Zapdos is pretty cool. Thunder's Incarnate is cool for 16 points. Urshiya Rapistrite is cool for 16 points. But not really a surprise. I think everything that drafted here kind of makes sense. Halucha is a little bit expensive for my legs, but it is what it is. 14-point tier, I think Azumarill is pretty nice value. Same with Buzzwole. Like, defensively, Buzzwole is really, really nice. I think that can be something to get picked up. Glastrier, definitely not worth it, so probably makes sense that it wasn't picked. Nidoqueen and Neolego. I like Neolego a lot this generation. It's definitely something I want to try in the next draft league. I'm doing Showdown leagues, but I think that's a decent mon for the tier. Nothing else sticks out here. In the last tier, I think for 12 points, Zarude is pretty good value. Just great stats. Decent enough bulk and nice speed tier. Swampert, just because it has Flip Turn, just makes it honestly great. I think it's definitely better than Seismitoad. Even though Seismitoad gives you the water resist or immunity, Swampert's just over a lot more bulky and the momentum is pretty clutch. Porygon 2, I really like it, but for 12 points, I could see why I wouldn't go draft it, but I would probably get it anyway. Manchow is really nice for 12 points just for general momentum. Everything else here I think pretty much makes sense. I'm not going to go into the lower point tiers, so they're probably not going to be as important. Anything that was banned that usually isn't banned, I think everything here looks pretty straightforward in terms of what was banned. Zygarde, maybe that's a little bit weird. I feel like Zygarde is generally like a late round 1 pick in a 16-man draft. So I could see that being like 18-point tier. I think being banned is a little bit over the top, but definitely fine. I could see Zamazenta also being fine, but I'm just a little bit more crazy about allowing stuff. So anyway, yeah, so I have 5 tiers of drafts. So like tier 1 is, I think, the best teams. They're just great. I would 100% use them no matter what. I think they have a great chance to win the championship. If they don't make playoffs, I would be super, super surprised. Tier 2 are teams I would draft. They look really, really fun, really good, cohesive, and I think they should have a decent shot at winning the championship. I could maybe see these teams not missing playoffs, but I would think it's pretty unlikely too. Tier 3, really solid teams. There might be missing a little bit of a component there that I would be uncomfortable with, but I could definitely see it bringing some success to a team, and it just might not fit my style. Tier 4, it's like a borderline. It's just missing something pretty big and pretty obvious, but the team isn't that terrible. Tier 5 is, I'm not going to call them bad. It's just not my style of team, and I think there's a lot of holes that I would not be comfortable without having, but I can see how maybe someone can turn it around, but I would be surprised if those teams made playoffs. Now, within those 5 tiers, obviously with 16 teams, there's going to be more than one person per tier. I honestly will rank them within those tiers based on how much I like the teams. So there might be teams that I might not necessarily, it's weird. So it's probably there might be teams I might not necessarily like, but I respect how well they can do, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we'll get right into this. So the 16th ranked in tier 5, I have Alolan Geyser. This was, I guess, the first team also listed on the document, coached by Aizen. Pretty high CCS score, so they definitely know what they're doing. But just this draft definitely does not fit my style. We got I guess they picked the Darmanitan here for 20 points, and that's a lot of points for Darmanitan. Kind of a cool function with Raikou is like momentum potentially. Togekiss is an okay defog or Seismitoad. Just a solid presence there. Registeel for really reliable rock. Seismitoad says Registeel is pretty solid rocks. Zoroark, I guess you can disguise as Darmanitan, but the problem is there that Zoroark doesn't really hit steals, and Darmanitan really doesn't hit steals. Zoroark doesn't really handle bulky water types, and Darmanitan doesn't really handle bulky water types. So it's cool that Zora can disguise as them, but it's kind of weird. Raikou handles bulky waters, which is great, but doesn't handle steals. And I guess you have Seismitoad, Registeel to defensively handle them, and Charizard, and Hitmonchan. So they have ways to hit steals, but not with your main offensive presence mons. Charizard is fine for 60 points Hitmonchan. Probably not great for 60 points Sceptile. Probably not great for 60 points. I like them on, but I think generally people don't really like it. And it's pretty one-dimensional, especially because you don't have a hidden power. And Meowstic for 20 points, that is what it is, but that's not going to be winning you many games. So really, I think it's you have the 7 Pokemon that are pretty viable and maybe an 8th in Charizard. So yeah, when I look at teams, I also should have put this in the beginning, but there's 3 categories that I was looking at. One is like, can you handle types? Like, do water types completely run over you? Do fire types completely run over you? You probably want checks to every single type on your team. You definitely want checks to every single type on your team. Second thing is, do you have all the roles that I feel like are important on a team? So do you have at least like 2 Stealth Rockers? Do you have Defog? Do you have Priority? Do you have a good knockoff users? Do you have some momentum on your team? Do you have a physical breaker? Do you have a physical sweeper, special breaker? Healing Wish support, a taunt user. You probably want a ground type to take on a electric type so they don't volt switch for free. You probably want a grounded poison type so toxic spikes aren't that problematic. And you probably want a Scald switch in because Scald is probably one of the best moves in the game. So you have the Seismitoad, which is the Scald switch in, but you don't have a grounded poison, which could definitely be problematic because you got Dorm, who doesn't want to run boots, so you're just going to get poisoned by it. Raikou is going to get poisoned, Seismitoad, Zoroark. Hitmonchan could have boots, but I don't think Hitmonchan's coming a whole lot anyways. And Ghosts are pretty okay against this team. I guess you have Zoroark, but you don't want to use Zoroark as your Ghost answer. You don't have like a normal type fat Ghost resist. Zoroark you want to use as like a disguise, an illusion Pokemon. So Zoroark's not the best for Ghost. Sceptile to get poison, Meowth to get poison. So that's definitely problematic there. But then the third category I have is do I think you have a lot of unique and cool ways to win games, and do you have different avenues to win games? So there are the 3 things I'm considering. Probably that third point is the most important when I'm ranking these teams. So yeah, anyway, Aizen's team, fire types are pretty annoying for this team. Darmanitan obviously wants them dead, and really the only thing you have for fire types is Seismitoad, and they couldn't even run like Power Herb Solar Beam. I ran that against 6-foot hacks. She had Swampert. I think it's his only primary fire resist. He had Porygon too, but Swampert was the main resist for Blacephalon. So I just ran Power Herb Solar Beam, killed it, and he really didn't have anything for Blacephalon at that point. I could have swept if I was a little bit more aggressive. Fighting types are also problematic, and obviously Darmon's fighting type's dead too. Togekiss is really your only resist. Now Charizard and Meowstic are too, but they're pretty niche picks. They're not going to be coming a whole lot. Strong Ghost types are a little bit annoying. There's not a lot of them around, so is what it is. Zoroark is not a great resist. Ice types are a little bit annoying because your water type is neutral to it. Registeel is a really nice answer, so that's fine. But outside of Registeel is a little bit iffy. And I just feel like the team can fall apart just pretty quickly because Seismitoad is a defensive mon, doesn't have recovery. Registeel is a defensive mon, you're going to have to rely on rest. And you don't have Wish support to bring into Registeel either. Charizard can roost, Togekiss can roost. I just feel like if your Seismitoad or your Registeel go down pretty early, then this team is going to crumble. Spikes also pressure this team pretty hard. I guess Togekiss is a pretty decent defogger. Charizard, not going to defog a lot. It can a little bit. Hitmonchan also kind of niche in our rapid spinning. And in terms of what I think the avenues are for this team to actually win games, you do have Raikou plus Dorm. I like that combination. Raikou to handle bulky waters is definitely great. And then you have Seismitoad in the back to more defensively handle bulky waters. So I think that's fine. I like this combination of Dorm plus Raikou. And Seismitoad Registeel is a pretty okay defensive backbone to bring this all together. But I don't really like these lesser point mons on this team. And the lack of recovery just really feels like this team is going to get pressured really quickly defensively. So 15th place, also in Tier 5. We have Oliver, coach of the Huddersfield Heracross. I like that name a lot. Huddersfield's a place I like to go to. But anyway, his team here, Tapulele, Weavile. That's already a weird combination. I'll get to in a bit. Hippowdon, Vaporeon, Decidueye, Heliolisk, Escavalier, Golbat, Lycanroc, and Combustion. Yeah, so in terms of taking on Pokemon, Earthquake is a little bit annoying against this team. I guess you have Golbat. You have Escavalier, which is kind of nice. So your Steel type is neutral to Earthquake, which is good. Decidueye can kind of take him on. Vaporeon can. Hippo kind of can. So it's actually not the worst. But like Earth Power would also be pretty strong. Not a great knockoff answer on this team. Hippo can. Vaporeon can. I guess like Escavalier kind of can. You'd probably want your item for that. But overall, I guess this team pretty defensively takes on Mons well. And I think that's definitely the highlight of this team. Like, that's a pretty decent defensive backman with Hippo, Vaporeon, Decidueye, Escavalier. I really like Golbat a lot for 60 points. I think that's really good value. Lycanroc, Combustion is what it is. Combustion's probably okay for 20 points. Escavalier I like for 80 points. In terms of the roles on this team, I think it's also fine. There's no grounded poison similar to the last team. I also saw that there's only 6 teams that had toxic spikes, especially because we saw like Nidoqueen and Neolego weren't picked, which I think is kind of odd. I think both those ones are great, but if not a lot of teams have toxic spikes, then it's really not that big of a deal, especially if you have Golbat, which is a pretty reliable defogger, and you could have like Boots Decidueye, which is fine. But What's weird about this team? It's just Lele Weavile. It's just a weird. I feel like that's just a weird combination because Lele you're gonna get the Psychic Train up, which is nice, and then you have Weavile that can click Ice Shard. And Weavile is fast enough that maybe you don't necessarily care about that, especially because Lele is a pretty good Dragon answer. And I think a lot of the times why I would draft Weavile is to have like a good revenge killer against dragons. So you handle dragons really well between a Lele and Weavile, but not having Ice Shard just seems weird. You're either going to have to have like Scarf Weavile or Scaff Lele to add speed like +1 Dragon Dance Pokemon, but then like Guard Chomp if it's like Choice Scarfed. Like what do you do against that? Like Earthquake's going to do a lot to Weavile, probably kill after rocks. And Lele is not going to add speed. Now you could defensively pivot into like Hippo or Decidueye if it's like a special Guard Chomp though and Hippo's taking more damage and such. And yeah, Hippo just seems weird on this team. Like what is Hippo provide? It's just a bulky ground. I hate Hippo, and I kind of hate Vaporeon and Decidueye. I'm not the biggest one, and Heliolisk I'm not the biggest fan of. So maybe this is why this team is so low for me. But like Hippo, you have to run like rocks because your other rock, is Lycanroc, and that's not going to be reliable. So you have to run rocks on Hippo. You probably want recovery. Otherwise, what's the point? Unless you're going to be passing off Wishes from Vaporeon a lot. You have Slack Off. You want Earthquake, obviously, for stab. And then your fourth move, I guess, is Roar or Toxic. It could be very setup bait, like if you don't have Roar, and if it's like Substitute Toxic. If like the opponent has Substitute and Hippo's fourth move is Toxic, then you're kind of screwed. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of Hippo on this field. I don't think you want Hippo on the field for long periods of time, especially if you don't have like Toxic Spikes to take advantage of Hippo's decent bulk. Vaporeon, it's better with a flip turn, but not much better. Decidueye, it's not really that strong, not really that bulky. Heliolisk is fine for 100 points, honestly, but you could probably get like a Raichu for a lot less, and it does basically the same thing. And I like Escavalier plus Golbat, but the fact that you're spending 100, you're 14, 12, 10 points on mines that I think are just subpar, or maybe it should be like 1 or 2 tiers below where they actually are in terms of their value, it's just tough. And especially because Weavile and Lele aren't the best synergetically, especially because both don't handle steals either. Lele doesn't want to hit steals, Weavile doesn't want to stand on steals. So you have like Hippo and Vaporeon, which is a fine. Escavalier, I think it gets close combat. It has Drill Run at least to hit steals, but yeah, it's just a weird combination there. I'm sure they can make it work out, but I'm just not a fan of this. 14th ranked team here is the Boomin Bathgate Blacephalons. Now, they did have Flapple when I was doing an analysis of this, and they changed it to Golisopod, which I don't know how much that's going to help with this team. But yeah, no, you can see it's definitely hyper offense. Zapdos, Blacephalon, Diggersby, Hatterene, Pangoro, Salazzle, Vanilluxe, Golisopod, Alolan Sandslash, and Stonejourner. Now, the three things I said, again, were defensive switch-ins. You got, covering, like, different roles that I like on a team, like rocks and spikes and a special break and all that, and ways to win games. And I don't think this team really has switch-ins to anything. Like, Zapdos could be a switch-in to stuff, but if Zapdos you're switching to stuff, that it's not going to be offensive, so it's probably not worth 180 points. Hatterene can take hits, but you really want it to be like a Trick Room setup sweeper. Nothing else takes hits. Gliscopod kind of takes hits on the physical side if you're Boots, Stonejourner, and Vanillix. If you set up Aurora Veil, then some Pokemon can take hits better, so that's fine. But definitely you have to be very reliant on Vanillix to set up Aurora Veil, and I think Specs is honestly the best set for Vanillix. There's not a lot of ice resist, so yeah. So just no normal switch in. Like, what's your normal switch in? Blacephalon. That's gonna get killed by any coverage move that any normal type would have. Earthquake. Strong fire types. Like, what's your switch in? Nothing. Stonejourner, which has base 20 SPDF. Strong water types, what you're switching. Gliscopod, I guess Flapple also did that. Gliscopod's probably a better bulky water, or like a water switch-in. Or Zapdos, which are Earthquake switch-in. Zapdos, fine. If they have Edgequake coverage, then you're dead. And that's it. Gliscopod, I guess, a little bit of a better Earthquake answer, too. So maybe Gliscopod is a little bit better than Flapple in terms of this, but I don't think it makes that much of a difference to this team. Rock weakness. I mean, you're going to have to run Boots on a lot of things. Zapdos is weak, Blacephalon's weak, Salazzle's weak, Vanillix is weak, Gliscopod is weak to rocks. They have, like, Diggersby and Sandslash that are resist, Pangoro too, so it kind of a little bit balances out, but it's just very annoying. Psychic types, Pangoro, not the greatest Psychic type switching, unless you're AV or, like, Scarf playing super aggressive, which we'd have to do with this team. And your knockoff answer is Pangoro, which is kind of meh. You want the item on that. Rockers on this team. What other rockers? Stonejourner? Yeah. Wish support, Hatterene is fine. He has Healing Wish, so I could see Hatterene bringing Healing Wish a couple times for sure this season, but you definitely want Hatterene, again, to be more of a Trick Room sweeper, more than just something that sets something up. You want to set itself up. Hatterene is also probably your Scald answer, which is suspect. Zapdos can be too. But otherwise, this team covers a lot of roles on this team outside of rocks. You have Spikes Gliscopod, so that's a little bit better for not having a great rocker, and you have Vanillix with Aurora Veil. So the combination of those two can definitely be fine. In terms of how the team's going to win games, it's definitely going to be relied on the offense. Like, yeah, you just overwhelm teams so much. You just don't worry about defensive switch-ins, which I definitely respect and I think can definitely work out. And Vanillix, it's just, you're going to have to bring Veil almost every week and then set up with Blacephalon or Diggersby or Zapdos, Pangoro to an extent, Hatterene. Zapdos is an okay pivot, but you probably want it to be super offensive on this team. You just stick to offense and then maybe win late game with, like, Agility Diggersby, or set up late game with Trick Room Hatterene plus Pangoro or Gliscopod even. Gliscopod's also a cool option under Trick Room. So definitely have really cool offensive ways to win. But I do have it in Tier 5, unfortunately. Now, Tier 4 is really only this team. It's not necessarily bad. It's a very weird team. This is the Sacramento Samurats and King Belgarian. I definitely would not draft this team. That's why I have it in Tier 4, but it's definitely above the other three teams I had. And I think it's primarily because they got Primarina plus Slowking. Two mons I absolutely love, and getting those for, especially Slowking for 12 points is a steal. It's probably honestly like at least a 14-point mon. 16 is probably pushing it, but Slowking is just so reliable and can take so many moves. It is great. And, like, man, there's some Pokemon here I really don't like whatsoever. It's a bulky team, and it had really no defensive weaknesses in terms of, like, type coverage. It handles a lot of types really well. Corviknight is pretty solid in a defensive role. Just 180 points for such a defensive Pokemon seems just not something I would do. Tyranitar, it doesn't really support the rest of the team, and for 16 points is a lot. It just makes fighting type so obvious. Again, Primarina, Slowking are nice answers for T-Tar, but T-Tar doesn't really help. Like, with Sand doesn't help anything on the team. And you want Sand because it just boosts the SPDF of Tyranitar so much. If you're running on Nerve, It definitely makes Trinitar a lot less bulky. Haxorus for 14 seems like a lot. For 12, I think it's a little bit more valid. It's not bad, though, but let's see. Other weaknesses, the priority on this team is basically non-existent. You got Primarina, Aqua Jet, and Dugtrio Sucker Punch, and this is non-Arena Trap Dugtrio, so I don't think you're bringing that a lot. I don't think you're bringing Dugtrio, Charge-a-Bug. You might bring Rapidash a couple times. I don't think I don't think it's terrible for the 4-point tier because it has pretty decent speed, and Boots makes it at least a little bit bulky, especially with Flame Body to maybe get some burns. But I think you're probably going to bring those top 7, plus maybe Rapidash a little bit. I don't think Dugtrio is coming to many games, especially because you do have like Dhelmise and Slowking and Trinitar Haxorus to handle it, so Electric's fine. You probably don't need Dugtrio because you want a lot of Electric answers for Corviknight. There's no Cleric on this team, which is definitely just bad. You definitely need a Cleric, especially for like a balanced team like this is. Maybe even like, I wouldn't call it stall because there is no Heal Beller, but it's definitely a balanced team. You definitely want a status absorber. And the ground type switch-ins are pretty weak outside of Corviknight. Like Trinitar, Haxorus, Primarina, Slowking. Dhelmise can take ground hits, and then these last 4, especially if like Earth powered and Beor doesn't take it. If it's like Earthquake, Beor can take them fine. But I feel like this team's a little bit Earthquake weak if Corviknight is weakened. Otherwise, it's a pretty cool bulky team. I just think the combination of Corviknight, Trinitar, Haxorus are just Pokemon I wouldn't get. Not as early as I did. Like, I would be fine getting any of those 3 mons as long as I got different Pokemon for those tier values. And yeah, it's just the Pokemon are like kind of. It's weird to say. Like Corviknight is fine in 18-point tier, but like, can I go back to what's in the 18-point tier? Like Melmetal is there, Latios is there, Necrozma is there, Victini's there. I think all those mons you just want a pretty nice offensive presence from your tier that's that high. So I think Corviknight is kind of suspect there. And Trinitar doesn't really support your team. Haxorus is kind of one-dimensional. So I think this team's in tier 4 over tier 5 because of Primarina plus Slowking are just so good. But it handles Corviknight well. Wouldn't be surprised if Corviknight got like top 20 in kills this season, just like for like defensive sets and Primarina, Slowking, Haxorus just taking on all the types that handle Corviknight fire and electric types. So it's built around Corviknight pretty well. It's just weird to build around Corviknight. So the rest of these teams are in tier 3 and above, so I really like these teams. And this next team here is Blattle, and it's like honestly surprising because I think this team can definitely be a lot higher. And the coach of the Helgen Hydreigons, pretty high CCS, definitely respectable. This is our rain team here. Got Thundurus, Ferrothorn, Pelipper, Barraskewda, Tornai, Umbreon, Hitmontop, Magmortar, Clefairy, Mawile. So definitely cool that they definitely have ways to function outside of rain, and they don't have to bring rain every week, which is always a plus because Pelipper is not forced to come every week. You could definitely bring like not a defensive team, but like a balanced team with Barraskewda outside of rain, Torn to kind of set up, Umbreon like bulky with Hitmontop, Magmortar. So yeah, this team can function outside of rain, but obviously you want to bring rain almost every time. Definitely a big weakness of this team is ice moves, or definitely an annoyance. The electric can also be pretty bad against rain teams, but between Thundurus, Ferrothorn, that's like a great answer to electric types. There's no ground type, but I don't think you necessarily needed it, though like Seismitoad would have been really cool with this team. But strong ice type moves, because Ferrothorn is neutral to them, Barraskewda is. It's definitely unfortunate. You're probably forced to bring Magmortar against like a Weavile. You can bring Umbreon, which can be passive if you're going to try to bring like a more offensive rain team. And Mawile is unreliable at best. That's fine. I like the low point monster they got. Clefairy Mawile for 40 is good. Magmortar for 60 is like borderline fine. Hitmontop I'm not the biggest fan of, honestly. But it's fine. But otherwise, this team is pretty good. There's no toxic Spike Absorber on this team, but as I was saying before, there's not a whole lot of T-Spike teams out there, and like Thunders doesn't care, Pharaoh, Pelipper, Torn, they don't really care. Barraskewda is going to be just flip turning anyway, so like it's honestly not the biggest deal. And Hitmontop can rapid spin fine. But yeah, this team is going to just function in rain. I feel like honestly you maybe have wanted like one more Pokemon that benefit from like water boosted moves. Now Barraskewda is obviously great in that role, but like a Ludicolo or like a Seismitoad would have been pretty neat with this, especially if they patch up like an ice weakness. Now they don't patch up a freeze dry weakness, but an ice weakness would have been a little bit better. Even like the couple Pokemon at the end here supplement rain pretty well. And even you have like spikes to handle all the rain sweepers, so definitely a cool team here for sure. So the next team we have here, I mean, also I would be kind of surprised this team didn't make playoffs. I feel like they probably will. So next we got, I guess the commissioner, the person that reached out to me, meme coach of the Team Plasmagnazones. This is one of my favorite team names. I definitely like this a lot. And you might be surprised I have this ranked as low as I do, 11th place, because you guys know how much I like Mew, and Mew is just awesome. But like just things that are just slightly off on this team. So going over type weaknesses, fire types are annoying against this team. You have Mammothine with Thick Fat, it brings essentially neutral to ice to fire because ice is weak, and then Thick Fat makes it neutral. And then you got Quillfish as your fire type answer, or Turtonator. And Turtonator's not coming a lot. I've not seen a Turtonator really do much of anything in Draft League. 40 points is probably meh for it. Luxray and Cradily I love for 40 points. I think that's good. Luxray is kind of meh, but is what it is. It's probably fine. It has a lot of stats anyway. Special Fairies are also going to be pretty good against this team because your Fairy resist is Doublade and Quillfish, who are both physical defensive based. So if you have, Lele destroys a lot of teams anyway, but even like a Florges or Sylveon, they do have Sylveon, that's funny, but Florges actually doesn't get Mystical Fire, so maybe like Sylveon won't actually wreck this team, but they also have Sylveon, so maybe it's not as big of a deal. I can't think of a fairy off the top of my mind that has fire coverage that would be good. Like Comfey doesn't have it either, Aromatisse, but it's Aromatisse, so maybe that's not big of a deal, honestly. It's definitely a cool team here, and like I feel like there's definitely a higher level even between the last rain team and the rest of these teams. Like this is a team I would definitely consider using. And because it has Mew, and Mew is probably, outside of Dragapult, the best money you could have picked. So definitely a really cool option there. And a couple decent offensive options. Mammothine, really, really strong. It's just hard to bring switch-ins to it. It's super annoying to prep for, and you guys all know how that feels. Could be AV, could be Scarf, could be Banded Life Orb, Rocks. Has a lot of options there. Sylveon is a pretty decent offensive and bulky option. Definitely versatile in that role. 14 points kind of maybe forces it to do more than it actually can. I feel like Sylveon's a mon that doesn't come to every game, and if it's the fourth most expensive mon, it probably should come to close to every game, like 80-90% of your games. I don't know if Sylveon fits that role, but it could. Just because a lot of teams have steel types, and then Sylveon you're forced to run Mystical Fire, and then your Wish, Protect, Mystical Fire, Hyper Voice, and it just becomes a little bit predictable, and then you don't have a Heal Bell, and you also want Sylveon to be like a Heal Bell user between Mandibuzz and Mew. Mandibuzz also fits really well in the team. It's a Ghost Resist for the Mew, so like Dragapult just wouldn't outright win this game, though they're also a Mammothine, so, or maybe like a Gengar would be pretty decent outside of the Mandibuzz. But like the next Pokemon, like Virizion and Doublade, they're kind of underwhelming. Like Doublade for 10 points, it's a lot. And like the stats are not really that good. Having 90 base attack, 90 base special attack, it's just not that good for a Pokemon that's probably going to try to sweep a lot. You just have to like force to boost like the +2 physical attack, and then probably have a Life Orb to kill a lot of Pokemon. It's just a lot of effort to like make Virizion actually work. It seems like a little bit too much effort to be like the 5th best Pokemon on your team. And Doublade being like the 6th best Pokemon is also kind of rough, especially because the special defense is so low that you're going to have to like go max HP, max special defense, which can kind of work, but then you're not hitting as hard. 110 attack is pretty decent, but you don't really have strong moves, like base power moves that you run with Doublade. And then, like, any fairy type with fire coverage would be unfortunate. As I was saying before, it might not be as many as I thought it was. So, Quillfish, Cradily, I like those as defensive Pokemon. Luxray, I like the value of it. Turtonator's kind of meh, but it is what it is. The speed on this team is really low. You have Mew as your second fastest Pokemon behind Cradily, or Virizion, Cradily, my gosh. But that's not great. And I don't know what the Scarfer is going to be on this team. Like, is it going to be Scarf Sylveon a lot of times? But it's pretty slow. Scarf Mamoswine, but then it's losing on a lot of power. You can run Scarf Virizion, but it's just weak anyway. So Scarfers on this team seem kind of not great. And a lot of Pokemon are pretty one-dimensional. Mamoswine, Mandibuzz, Mamoswine, Sylveon could be like specs or defensive, but I don't think that's a whole lot of versatility. Doublade, pretty straightforward. Quillfish is setting up spikes. I guess you could Rain Dance Sweep, but that's pretty niche. Cradely's not setting up rocks. Electrade's being defensive. Turtonator, Shell Smashes, I guess, or Rapid Spins. So it's really only Virizion or Mew are like your very versatile mons. And Mew obviously is the most versatile mon, so maybe that makes up for it all. But Virizion is also just not the greatest Pokemon. So having Mew on this team definitely boosts it up in the rankings, but I think it's just missing a couple like better mon, honestly. So Team 10 also has the best Pokemon in the format, and probably why I have this ranked a little bit higher than the Mew team, because they have Dragapult. And Dragapult is just so good that it'll just instantly make your team at least mid-tier. And I think the issues I have with this team, it's more of the defensive synergies, but I think this team is a little bit more creative ways to win games as opposed to the last team by Meme. This is coached by the Maryland Litwicks and the coach, the H-Man, 911, or 054. I just wrote the wrong numbers down on my doc. So, yeah. So some weaknesses of this team, Earthquakes, are like you have Lando as your resist, Melodic. I'm actually drafting for a draft league game, and like Melodic gets 2 KO'd by Landers after rocks if it's max defensive. If you're on Flame Orb, Marvel Scale, then you take 2 hits, but then you're losing HP every turn. I'm just not as big of a fan of Marvel Scale. It'd have to be really niche situations to make Marvel Scale worth it. If you're running Flame Orb over leftovers. Because Amoonguss doesn't want to take him either because of the neutrality to an Earthquake. Stealth Rock users on this team are kind of meh. You have Deante, which is really reliable. And Landers could do it, but Landers is going to want to do a lot of things. I'm going to probably touch on that in a bit. Landers wants to do a lot of things on this team, and it's definitely not going to be able to. Ghosts are a little bit annoying to this team. You have Cincino and like the fastest Ghost. Flame is not the biggest deal, but like a Gengar would be super annoying against this team because Cincino is your Ghost resist. And Psychics somewhat could be problematic because you don't have a Dark type. It's probably fine for the 20-point tier, but it's not really much of a Pokemon. So yeah, otherwise, like in terms of role compression, I think this team is just about everything I'm really looking for. Because Drag can both be like a special breaker, physical breaker, special sweeper, physical sweeper. It's honestly crazy how good Dragapult could be. It's not a great of a special sweeper because there are no toxic spikes on this team, and you really want toxic spikes with Dragapult. I've used Dragapult in a lot of leagues, and you definitely want T-Spike support to handle bulky waters. And you have like Amoonguss handle bulky waters fine. But otherwise, you want something a little bit more offensive, and Dragapult could do that if it's like Hex Spam. But yeah, Dragapult, in general, you want answers to handle fairies, and you want stuff to handle steals. And I think this team handles both of those types very well. You have Landers to handle steals, Melodic, Magnezone, Trash steals. I really like this pick with the Magnezone. I think these first 5 can come to pretty much every week. Maybe not Landers, because Landers, like, you really want it to do a lot of things on this team. Honestly, the top 6 can come every week. Deante, Magnezone, Amoonguss, Melodic, Landers, Dragapult. That's just a really nice combination there. Fairy types, I was saying, with Dragapult. Amoonguss and Magnezone handle fairy super well. So I like that combination there. It's just a very bulky team. Usually with Dragapult, I like to go with more offense and making sure that Dragapult doesn't have to like be the primary win condition every week. I gotta have a different offensive mon, and Dragapult can scarf or Dragapult can just specs and one time just absolutely nuke something. Dragapult doesn't have to be the Pokemon that wins every game for you, but it kind of has to for this team. But because of so much bulk and so many switches this team has, I think it's not that bad of a approach to this team. But Toxic Space would have been great. But yeah, Landers, it just seems like it's asked to do a lot. It's asked to rock, it's asked to defog, because otherwise you're going to rely on Espeon to like aggressively remove hazards. And that seems kind of suspect, because Espeon is not the bulkiest mon in the world. But yeah, Salk, Cincino, good offensive mons too. Espeon, really nice value for the 80-point tier. I like Deancey for the 80-point tier. Among Us, Melodic, that's going to be just a tough defensive combination to break. So yeah, I see this team doing really well. Next team is actually Among Us, Coach of the Atlanta Sobble. Really neat mods. I thought this was also one of the early teams that I saw, and I thought I was going to rank the team higher than it ended up being. But it's definitely a really cool team. So defensive switch-ins to this team, I think are honestly pretty good. Maybe like strong rock types are a little bit annoying because you have Landorus who's neutral. Rotom doesn't want to take like a track on Stone Edge, Incineroar, Araquanid. Like all these mons are kind of meant to it, but Aegislash can take them on well. So yeah, honestly, I think this team is really solid, like defensive bulky wise. In terms of roles, I think this team there's a couple roles that I feel like if they were patched would make this team significantly higher than what they are. You probably want, like Landorus is a great rocker, but you don't want it to run rocks every week. You want it to be offensive some weeks, Scarf, setup, and your backup rocker is Wigglytuff. And because you don't have spikes in this team, you're not getting a lot of chip damage. So it's going to make it a little bit harder for like Specs Aegislash to maybe get to a KOs or Landorus to get to a KOs and such. You do have Dragalge, Toxic Spikes, which are nice. Yeah, having a second rocker outside of Wigglytuff probably would be a little bit better. Trick Room support would actually be pretty cool with this team with Dragalge and Aegislash. I feel like you could have gotten a cool Trick Room combination there, and Incineroar to an extent too, with like power trip sets, but you don't have any Trick Room setters. Not the biggest deal, but I felt like for this team specifically, I think it would have definitely benefited from it. And especially because this team is really slow. That like the Mew team that had Verzion and Mew is over base 100. The Pokemon over base 100 on this team are Manectric. And I've drafted Manectric a lot and have not brought it a lot. It's really not that great. Especially because you have a Rotom Wash in this team. Like, how often are you going to bring Rotom Wash and Manectric on the same team, let alone Manectric over Rotom Wash? It seems pretty tough. You might bring them both to a game, but it would be pretty suspect. Yeah, so you just had a little bit more speed. Like, you're probably forced to run Scarf Landorus or Scarf Rotom a lot. Now, like, Araquanid has Sticky Webs, which is good. It's, like, I really like that combination there. But, I mean, Boots are a thing. Levitators and Flying types are also a thing. I can just ignore Sticky Webs. And I think this team's a little too reliant on Sticky Webs. If you had, like, just one Pokemon that was fast, like, that wasn't a Manectric, I think you'd be a little bit better off. But, yeah, like, you see these Pokemon here, Aegislash, Landorus, Rotom, you can bring those mons every week, and they're going to succeid. I really like this combination here. I had Aegislash, Rotom Wash, and Clefable over Landorus for EWT Season 2, which I ended up winning. That was a pretty bulky team that I had there with Aegislash and Rotom Wash. I like Aegislash a lot. Hopefully you do well with it. It's pretty surprising that Aegislash plus Landorus. That's a pretty cool combination there. And pretty good Pokemon to supplement these two. Like Rotom Wash and Aegislash, a nice Ice Resist for Lando. Landorus and Rotom are both good Earthquake switch-ins for Aegislash. Rotom and Incineroar, Araquanid all take on Fire types for Aegislash. Ghost types, Incineroar handles them well. So I like the combination of this team. And honestly, these top six, Aegislash, Lando, Rotom, Incineroar, Araquanid, and Dragalge, I really want to use Dragalge as well. Like, these six can come to every week and, like, just do really well. But I really like these backup options. Like, Type Null, it's really bulky. Like, it's tough to bring down. So, like, especially because, like, it's only weak to fighting types, and you have a Landorus plus Aegislash. So how often are you bringing your fighting types? Even, like, Araquanid plus Dragalge. Like, fighting types aren't that good against this team otherwise. Eldegoss, I think it's a pretty decent rapid spin user, especially with Regenerator. It only has grass coverage, basically, but I feel like you could take advantage of that. Manectric, it's not coming often, but it's fine. Wigglytuff, will probably come to 1 or 2 games, but it fulfills a good enough niche for a 40-point mon. So yeah, cool team. I thought it was going to rank it a little bit higher, but I like the web's options, and I really like a lot of what the team provides. And I was actually the top team in tier 3, which was like, I might draft this team and I feel like they would do okay, but like are kind of missing like one thing. The rest of these teams are going to be in tier 2 or tier 1. This is the I guess the bottom team of tier 2, but these would be teams that I would consider drafting. Could definitely make playoffs, and I think have a decent chance to win a championship. So we got the Bungus Eaters coached by Dean Blade, and like this is a crazy team, but I think it could definitely work. And you see that it's topped with Dracovish, and Dracovish can definitely do really good work. And you have 7 Pokemon that are tier 100 or higher. So, like, a lot of really good options, and it's pretty balanced. Like, you can spend 200 points for a Darm, but you have a lot more overall options from, like, the top that could come. So it's a very deep roster, which I definitely appreciate. The defensive weaknesses, honestly, are pretty dumb, because it's, like, a stalled team with hyper offense mixed into it. This is such a crazy team, but I think it can definitely work. And I think really the only downside, like role-wise, is your removal is kind of suspect. You have Regieleki and Archeops. Archeops is fast and can defog fine, but I think you want it more offensive, and Regieleki can rapid spin fine, but you probably want it doing other things besides clicking rapid spin. But yeah, this is just a really interesting approach to this team. The Dracovish Bulu combo, I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of, because Dracovish, obviously, Fish's Rend is so strong, and you want to be hitting those, like, outside of any mon that has, like, Water Absorb, you're going to do fine. Even, like Grass types, though, can kind of handle Dracovish, and by giving, like, Grass types Grassy Recovery, and also giving them the option to run Grassy Seed to take hits from Dracovish, and Recovery from Grassy Train, kind of seems suspect. Like, it might make it harder for Dracovish to actually get to a KOs, especially because you don't have Spike support on this team. You have Toxic Spike support, which is great, and really, really good Rockers and Chansey plus Bronzong, but no Spikes. What else on this team? The bulk is just insane. Toxapex, Chansey, Bronzong, like, those 3 Pokemon, like, can just win games just sitting on the field just with those 3. Chansey passing a super big wishes to Chandelure, Regieleki, Dracovish, and its Wish plus Teleport is not legal, but you can wish and pass pretty reliably depending on what the Pokemon is. Bulu with Grassy Seed Recovery making Earthquakes weaker for Toxapex is a cool combination, and also for Regieleki. Definitely a neat combination there. This team just covers a lot of weaknesses, like type synergies, like super well. And Chansey Bronzong just a really nice glue. Toxapex, like there's just so much bulk in this team. Like fighting types are gonna do well. Like if you bring a water type, got to deal with Bulu. You got to deal with Regieleki. You got to deal with Toxapex that could just sit on the field because it's not gonna worry about toxics from water types. And if you scald them, even you just bring in Chansey and set up a wish. So water absorb mons would be pretty tough to bring against this team. If it's like Seismitoad, which is water plus ground, then Regieleki isn't as good, but then you have like Bulu, which obviously just sits there. But like Seismitoad can be an issue, but and like Gastrodon and Quagsire, but that's only 3 mons. Yeah, even like these last couple mons. Archeops, I really like a lot. Persian, really nice speed, really decent amount of speed. There's definitely like a speed cutoff though, because you have like 3 really fast mons and Regieleki, Archeops, Persian, and then the next fastest mon is Chandelure base 80. And honestly, I don't care about speed tiers a whole lot, but like the base 100 tier is something that's pretty important. If you have 3 Pokemon that add speed, that's honestly doable though. And Marowak for 20 points, I think it's honestly pretty decent value. So yeah, this team is just super cool. I could definitely see it like being a train wreck and also being so annoying to prep for. Rank 7. And I was also thinking, like, I wanted to rank this team higher, but there's like just a little bit holding it back. But I really like the look of this team. Of LA Lucaris, coached by Hello Kid. Not anything super threatening up top. Like Dracovish is super threatening, but it's only tier 16. That's pretty decent value. You got Kyurem, Tracheon, Crook, and Metagross. All 4 of those Pokemon are can like win games on their self. It's like agility, weakness policy, Metagross. If you're Scarf Crocodile, like an Ultra player who did for NCP, Dual Dance, Tracheon, Dragon Dance, or Specs Kyurem. Like all 4 of those Pokemon are just so annoying to prep for. Moltres can also agility sweep, but that's not going to happen as often. But like those 4 Pokemon are just so annoying to prep for. But they're all kind of weak to fighting, resist like neutral to fighting. And you have Moltres and Whimsicott, which resist, but even like your fat Pokemon, Licky doesn't want to handle fighting types. Now Tracheon's like a really good answer, and like I think we saw that Galar Zapdos was not drafted, but like what would be the team's answer to Galar Zapdos? It would be like Moltres coming in, not predicting like a rock move, and like getting a Flame Body, or Whimsicott revenge killing with Prankster, or just the add speed with Moonblast. So fighting types are definitely really annoying against this team. You also have Magmar with Flame Body. That's interesting. Earthquake similarly is also annoying. Kyurem is neutral, can kind of take them. But Earthquake users generally have like rock coverage. Tracheon's weak, Crook is neutral and has Intimidate, which is cool. But like there's also special ground types, and base 70 or base 92 Spit F is okay. But you don't want to be taking hits if you're like a setup sweeper. But I guess it could be defensive. So maybe Crook could probably handle a lot of ground types, to be fair. Metagross doesn't either. You have Moltres and Whimsicott, and I guess to an extent Crook. Like your bulky Pokemon aren't going to really want to take one either. You also have Thwackey, which can set up Grassy Terrain to make Earthquakes not as strong. So that's like a fair option. So this team has counterplay to Earthquake. They're just not as reliable Pokemon. I think the downside of this team is I don't think Moltres and Whimsicott are that reliable. And like you probably want better grass or fire types on this team than what the Pokemon you have are right now. Like I like Lantern and Licky. They're both great values for the 60-point tier, especially Licky. Just setting up wishes for all these like strong Pokemon that can take like a hit pretty reliably. So like they're pretty good wish recipients. And you see the base 110 HP compared to like the base HP of these 3 Pokemon that don't have recovery. Kyurem has Roost, so it's not as important to pass wishes into it, but they're going to recover a lot of HP back when Licky sends them a wish. So yeah, no, this team just has a really cool offensive combination with these top 2. I'm just not the biggest fan of Moltres, Whimsicott, but they're like okay pivots if you have to. Just a lot of fighting weaknesses, and like if you can get past fightings, I think this team can do pretty well. And also like Crook, Metagross, all 3 of those mons don't really want to handle bulky water types. Like Tracheon can power through them, but I don't know if Track wants to take a Scald and get burned. Same with Metagross and Crocodile. Kyurem handles them pretty well. Same with like Whimsicott and Lantern. So it's not the biggest deal for bulky waters. But yeah, this team is pretty cool. And I would not be surprised to like finish top half of playoffs, honestly. Next team, we got Birmingham Blitzels, coached by Unknown Pignu, I guess HB. This is a pretty unique team. It's Sand with Finny Tangrowth. So a really, really nice bulky combination, Finny Tangrowth. I had it for my latest NCP run. I didn't have Sand though, but I figured I definitely wasn't the biggest fan of Tangrowth, but I understand why people like it. 14 points is probably a little bit too high for it, honestly. Maybe 12 points I would respect a little bit more, but no hidden power definitely hurts Tangrowth. It has some coverage, so it's not the biggest deal, but you definitely want hidden power coverage with Tangrowth. With this team, the only defensive thing I saw was Freeze Dry is pretty annoying, because top of Finny is your Ice Resist, and it doesn't want to take Freeze Dries. I guess Gigalith can take him fine. A lot of Freeze Dry's Pokemon do have water coverage, so that might be a little bit annoying. But like Audino can take hits, really no issue. And also, this team doesn't have any momentum mons that I see of outside of like Healing Wish Audino, which could come a little bit. It's not going to come every week, maybe a couple games. Not a lot of momentum to get in like your Dracozolt. So like if you're going to set up Sand with Gigalith, like how do you get it in? I guess you explode with Gigalith, but then you're not going to have Sand late game. Or you like hard switch into Excadrill or hard switch into Dracozolt, which are both weak to Earthquakes. So you like have to bring in Tangrowth, and then maybe if you're a red card and then bring in Dracozolt or Excadrill, like that can be fine. You're not going to bring red card every week though. You don't want to be that insane. But Finny, Tangrowth, Great Corp, Dracozolt, I think is pretty underrated as a sand abuser. Sand Rush, Dracozolt is just monster strong. If you don't have a really, really good ground type, then you're in trouble. And then you're facing Excadrill, which I guess also doesn't really want to take on ground types. And that was also kind of a weakness I had. Like Finny and Tangrowth defensively take them on. But like everything else here, I guess Sneasel is also okay in that role. But like you probably want something a little bit more offensively threatening to ground types than Finny or Tangrowth on this team. But I guess in like the other side, you know that the ground type's coming every week, so you can definitely prepare to take advantage of ground types coming, and they probably have to be max physical defensive to take on Excadrill, Dracozolt, so you can definitely take advantage of that. I also really like the last 5 picks. Like I like all the picks in this team. Dottler for webs, I think that's definitely viable. Audino for a bulky wish type user that I think might be better than Licky. For only 4 points, great value. Wheezing for toxic spikes and just another really annoying bulky mon, great value. Sneasel for 8 points in the speed tier, I think it's great. Sigilyph can do anything you wanted to. 10-10 Lens like also hits super, super hard, but you could be like Cosmic Power and Psycho Shift with Will-O-Wisp. That's also a really, really annoying set. So there's definitely a lot of really cool combinations this team has. It's a little sand dependent. Like if you don't have sand, like if you don't bring Gigalith 1 week, then what's Dracozolt going to do? I guess you run Hustle and hope you land hits. So I think the team might be a little reliant really on these top 5 coming like every game, which might be a weakness of this team. But I think it can do pretty well. Team 5, we got Colorado Gigalith, coached by Shamblin. I guess that's how you're going to say it. Yeah, you see these first 3. I'm honestly surprised I didn't rank it higher, but I think it's because of the rest of the Pokemon. But there's really no defensive weaknesses, and this team really covers every role I want pretty well. Celesteela Hydreigon is insane. And like Starmie, even as like your 3rd best Pokemon, is pretty reliable to come like 8 or 9 games out of 10. So I really like these top 3 combination here. I really am liking Celesteela with like Meteor Beam sets. Like that mon can just win every week with like Autonomite, Meteor Beam, 2 coverage moves. Like that mon just does super well. Flash Cannon, Air Slash, or Giga Drain, or Flamethrower to hit steals. It all really depends. I guess this team probably wants to hit steals a little bit harder. Toxicroak can do that fine. Hydreigon doesn't really hit steals either, so that might be a little bit of a downside. But I guess Hydreigon has dark coverage at least to hit it okay. But yeah, I feel like that was just the downside I had with this team. Like, I'm not necessarily against anything else in the team, and maybe because you spent so many points in your top 3 mons, it's 48 out of 100 points, that you have to sacrifice a little bit of depth, and like they got good value for your Pokemon, but like if your 4th best Pokemon is Slurpuff or your 4th best Pokemon is Talonflame in tier 100, that seems a little tough. It seems like you're really relying on these top 3 to win every week. Like Gourgeist is fine, especially if like you have a lot of versatility, if you're going to run the fast set or the slow set or something in between. Miltank, it's a pretty solid rocker plus a normal type. Doesn't set up wishes, but it like self-sustains itself better with Miltank, and you could have run coverage a little bit better. So that's fine. Pincurchin, seems weird that you want to raise your opponent's electric moves to hit them harder, to hit Celesteela and Starmie for more damage. But I see why you'd want spikes on a team, and maybe some cool sets with Slurpuff. Maybe they have other things in mind with the Pincurchin that I don't really see. It's also really slow, but it can hit really hard with the that electric move, Electric Surge. No, that's the move. I forget what the move. Rising Voltage. That's it. It gets Rising Voltage, so it hits super, super hard. And I guess you have Celesteela plus Hydreigon, Talonflame, Gourgeist for ground types, so Pincurchin can fit. Toxicroak I really, really like for the 6-point tier. I think it's definitely usually a little over tiered, but I think this is appropriate. Maybe even slightly under tiered. I think 8 points is like a lot for Toxicroak, but 6 points seems too low. So hopefully they take a lot of advantage of this. Nasty Plot, Sword Stance sets, Scarf can definitely work. Rhydon, really, really liking the 4-point tier. I don't draft Rhydon a lot because it's weak to Grass Knot and a lot of Horse Gold that Raikou has. It could take a hit if it's like max special defensive, kinda, if they're not boosting item. So it's not the most reliable Pokemon, but for 4 points, it's hard to go against Rhydon, like for a physically defensive Pokemon. So yeah, no, it's just a really cool team, but just like the top 3 are cool, and the rest of the team is just like fine, like not the most threatened by it. But Celesteela, Hydreigon, Starmie, they're gonna win a lot of games. The 4th team we got here is the Belligerent Blazikens, coached by JBone832. And my boy Clefable on this team, and Latios. I really like both those Pokemon. Scizor, I also had Scizor, and I got rid of it in my last NCP season. Not the biggest fan of Scizor, but I understand why people would like it. Defensive weaknesses in this team, flying types are definitely problematic, which I guess mainly is only Tornadus. Like your flying type resist is, I guess, special defensive Clefable, or like maybe Piloswine, I guess maybe like an AV Raichu, which I've seen before, to be fair, but definitely not the greatest flying type switch-ins. Earthquakes are also, to an extent, a little bit annoying against this team. You have Latios that takes them on fine, but like Clefable, Scizor is neutral to them, so unless you're like max physical defensive, then Scizor is going to take a decent amount. Gastro is the most physically defensive Pokemon, base 68 defense. So it's going to be taking Earthquake's not the best. Piloswine could take him okay. Scrafty and Intimidate takes him okay, and then Cramarant's there, but that's not going to be coming a whole lot. I think Earthquake can be a little bit annoying against this team. That's pretty much it. Like Fairy Dragon Steel Core is just really good with Latios, Clefable, Scizor. Like that's a pretty good way to spend 50% of your budget between these 3 Pokemon. And like contrary to this team, I feel like the last remaining Pokemon just seem better. Like Dorm is like your 4th best Pokemon compared to like Talonflame or Slurpuff, just seems that much better. And Gastrodon is like a pretty solid defensive bulky water. Like that can come to like close to every game and do really well. And the downside obviously is no rocks. We have Clefable and Piloswine instead of rocks, so that's honestly fine. Darmanitan should fit really well on this team because Latios, Clefable, Scizor all don't really want to handle steals. So you got Darmanitan to offensively pressure steals, you have Gastrodon, Piloswine to defensively answer them, and then you have Scrafty, which can kind of both offensively and defensively pressure steals. So I really like the combination of Pokemon there. Also a lot of recovery on this team. Like Latios, reliable recovery. Clefable can wish. Whoever has reliable recovery, Scizor can roost. Gastro has recover. And I guess Crafty has like Shed Skin Rest, which isn't the most reliable, but it can do it. Roselia, Cramorant, even Raichu's Wish. So a lot of recovery on this team. So it's going to be tough to take this team down. And I really like the low point tier. Like if you're spending 50% of your budget on your top 3 mons, you're only spending 10% of your budget on the last 3. And Raichu, Roselia, Cramorant, I think that's a really, really solid combination there. Not sure how often you're going to bring Cramorant. It's only a 20-point mon, so it's hard to like really go against it. I think Cramorant's fine for a 2-point tier, probably better than most. Roselia can set up spikes or T-spikes pretty reliably. I think this can come to like 3 or 4 games and do decent work. I guess it's like a bulky water answer, and you already have Gastrodon, but that's fine. And Raichu basically does what Helios does, but it's just a little bit faster, and it's a lot cheaper. So I like Raichu in this role. So yeah, really, really cool team. I could definitely really see myself using this. I'm just not the biggest Scizor fan. All right, for team number 3, we got St. Louis Battle Hawluchas coached by Cram. Now, this is just a really cool team, highlighted by obviously these top 2, Jirachi plus Coco. Such a strong combination, like, and then Hawlucha, like, that's really the only thing. If Hawlucha was like 12 or even 14, like 16 points is a lot for Hawlucha. That's 1/6 of your budget. For Pokemon, that's really relying on getting a seed boost from Coco and hopefully sweeping. It's just pretty one-dimensional. Now, you can do other things with Hawlucha, but that's really the only viable set you're going to consistently bring with it. If you had like a different offensive Pokemon with this in the 160 point, Gengar, you have Nidoking, Kartana would have been great. Keldeo would have been great. Como could honestly work pretty well with this team. if it's like a little bit bulkier approach. Urshifu Rapid Strike would have been super annoying. Zapdos would have been amazing. So like, even though the speed tiers would have matched the same, but like as Jirachi, but like if the Koko or a Hawlucha was something different, I feel like it would just be a lot better. Too many people are prepared for what Hawlucha does nowadays. But Nidoking, I had Koko plus Nidoking in my TBL run, and like those two are just so strong together. Like these top 4 are just so strong. And Porygon Z, just another really strong offensive Pokemon there to handle it all. And pretty okay-ish bulk for the rest. Not great, honestly, but these top 5 are just amazing. So weaknesses are Earthquake. They're definitely annoying because Jirachi, Koko, and Nidoking are all weak to Earthquake. So like Hawlucha is there, Mantine is there, Leafeon is there, and Leafeon I feel like it's probably going to come to like at least 5 games. I would be surprised if it didn't. I think Leafeon's coming a lot as like your 5th or 6th mon, and I think it's honestly fine in that role. It could take on Earthquakes really well. It's like if you didn't have this Leafeon on your team, I probably would have dropped at least 3-4 slots in just because like Earthquake is just way too spammable against this team otherwise. And Mantine isn't the most reliable Pokemon. It's fine. It was fine when I got it for 4 points for NCP, but it's not that reliable. Ice types are also a little bit annoying between Hawlucha and Nidoking. And even like Mantine, especially if it's like freeze dry, you have to rely on Jirachi to take those hits. But yeah, like the offense just of this team is just crazy. Like Porygon Z doesn't handle steals. You have Nidoking and Hawlucha to do so. And Koko to an extent as well. Nidoking, like the downside of it is just slow. Then you have Hawlucha, Koko, Edscarf, Jirachi to handle it. Like bulky Psychics are a little bit annoying for Hawlucha. And I guess bulky Psychics can be annoying to this team, but you have Guzzlord, which I think is decent on this team, and Jirachi, which can just do almost anything. So I like that combination there. Jirachi can do like really a lot of things in this team. It can be Scarfed. It could be like a special defensive set, Healing Wish to get in like Koko or Nidoking or a Porygon Z again. I think it's really nice. You might rely on Mantine this team a little bit more than like most teams would want to rely on a Mantine. It is your 6th best Pokemon and one of your primary Earthquake switch-ins. But like special defensive wise, it can take a lot of hits. So I think that's honestly fine. Yeah, a lot of these picks like Armado pretty irrelevant, Heatmore's pretty irrelevant. Guzzlord could come to a couple games. I think it's fine, and Mantine is not going to be the most reliable Pokemon, but I think these 5 offensive mons, and then you throw in a Leafeon or a Guzzlord in situational matchups, Mantine just for overall bulk. I think it's going to be fine. Like these top 5 should come to like every game, and it's going to be pretty hard to like pressure this team otherwise. So yeah, the last team in my tier 2, I only have one team in tier 1, which I think is like above and beyond the best team. This number 2 team is also really cool, and that's the Iron City Ferrothorns, coached by Hoth Hados. Torn-T, that's maybe the 3rd best Pokemon in the format. It's tough to say. You have to rely on a Hurricane a lot for Torn to do really well, and I haven't used a Tornadus T. I've used Tornadus I in APA, and like Nemon hit like a truck. And, like if Torn T is just a little bit weaker, but it's a lot faster actually. 111 versus 121 is a big deal because you can be a lot bulkier with Torn, especially because you have Boots and you have Regenerator can like consistently come in. If you miss a Hurricane, you just U-turn out and try it again later. With Torn I, it's like a one-time thing. You're coming in and trying to do as much damage as possible. You don't really switch out a whole lot. But Torn T, you definitely can. So yeah, Torn T is great. Rillaboom, Cinderace, like that momentum combination there is just insane. And like Torn and Rillaboom don't want to deal with steals. Cinderace handles them super well. Cinderace doesn't want to deal with bulky waters, and you have Torn and Rillaboom. They handle really well against that combination there. So yeah, those first 3 are just insane. And then you have a Reuniclus that could just like do anything you want. It can be defensive. It can set up Trick Robes. It can Calm Mind. Iron Defense can sweep. Can be bulky. Has a lot of options there. So like those first 4 are just insane. And I think the rest of the supporting cast honestly fits really well. There's a couple type weaknesses, I think, on a team that otherwise would put it, like, in the tier 1, but this is really neat. So, like, fire types, definitely problematic against this team. Like, a strong fire type like Blacephalon, like, what do you do against Blacephalon? If it's, like, Specs fire coverage, like Torn, I guess you'd have to be AV. Or, like, what do you do against Darmanitan against this team? Like, if it's, like, Scarf, Darmanitan, like, what's your answer? Lapras, like, physical defensive Sand Slash is definitely tough. No fire resist outside of Cinderace is going to be tough against teams with fire types. Not a lot of teams have really strong fire types necessarily, so it's not the biggest deal, but definitely hindrance there. And rock types are also super annoying against this team. Your rock resists are Copper Jaw and Sand Slash, and Copper Jaw is not a Pokemon you're going to rely on take that many moves. You can reliably take like 1 or maybe 2 hits with Copper Jaw, unless you're like super bulky and not as offensive. If you're a heavy metal type of Copper Jaw set. But yeah, rock types can be annoying with Torn plus Cinderace. Now Rillaboom can probably revenge kill any rock type with a Grassy Glide, but just something to watch out for. Your electric resist, considering that you have a Torn in your team, could be better. Rillaboom is a really nice answer to electric types, but then you have like Sand Slash as your ground type. You probably want a little bit of a better ground type to handle electrics than a Torn. Especially like electric, say, Thunderous T that has Sludge Bomb. Right? Is Rillaboom going to be your answer into Thunderous? Or even like Raikou that could have Scald. Is your Rillaboom going to be your answer to Raikou that could just Scald you and get a burn on your Rillaboom? So like it's going to be a little bit tough for electrics. And again, you're relying on Copper Jaw as your steel type, and the steel types are the most important type, according, like in my opinion, to handle a lot of hits. And like Copper Jaw doesn't want to take a lot of hits, but the upside of that is Reuniclus could take a lot of hits that Copper Jaw doesn't want to. So like normally, if Copper Jaw your steel type, I'm a little bit suspect about how like the bulk backbone of your team is going to be, but having Reuniclus honestly solves a lot of issues. Yeah, like. This team basically has the definition of what I would want on a team. Like Drapion, really nice for like a dark type to handle ghost types, and like a grounded poison type, and something that can set up toxic spikes, so like Reuniclus could maybe. Sweep late game a little bit easier. Even Comfy can like sweep late game with T-spikes up. Lapras, I think it's really good value for the 4-point tier. Water Absorb user. Rest probably a pretty decent amount, but it just has really nice stats. And Boots just makes it a lot more bulky. Sandslash, for 60 point, it's a little expensive, but honestly it works fine. It's a Spike user, Rapid Spin user, Stealth Rock user, to supplement the Copper Jaw, which aren't the greatest rockers, but it could definitely work. Even like Pikachu, honestly I think it's pretty good value in the 2-point tier. It hits like a truck. And it's also electric resist for the Torn, which is fine. And even like Trick Room, again, that's something I noted. Trick Room works well with this team with Reuniclus plus Copper Jaw. You could definitely get like cheeky late game sweeps with those two. This honestly is probably my favorite team of the draft. Like if I wanted to like go into a draft league right now, I would be super, super stoked if this was the team that I drafted. I feel like there's a lot of avenues you could go on with this team. I think mainly because like Torn and Rillaboom are like both round 1 picks, and you're able to get both of them. So yeah, like this is my favorite team, but I think the number 1 team I think is just overall constructed better. And this is the Kanpur Cocos, coached by Ari Jomo. So yeah, we got Garchomp, Heatran, Slowbro, Crobat, Aromatisse, Passimian, Skuntank, Tauros, and Shedinja. So, yeah, like, really no defensive weakness on this team. Like, Garchomp's weak to Ice and Fairies, and Heatran handles them really well. Heatran doesn't want to handle water types. Slowbro, Rotomo are there to handle them. Doesn't want to handle ground types. Slowbro, Crobat, Rotomo are also there. Fighting types, you got Slowbro, Crobat, Aromatisse. Really, really cool avenues here. Slowbro doesn't want to handle grass or electric types. You got Heatran and Garchomp, and Crobat, and Rotomo. So, like, it's just an insane defensive combination here. I do cover everything in terms of what you want on your draft. Rockers, Garchomp, Heatran, great. Special Breaker, Heatran with, like, Scarf. Or Specs Eruption can definitely work in that role. Slowbro can also hit pretty hard with a Life Orb. It's not that often you run Boots or Leftovers a lot, or like a Colbur Berry or something with Slowbro. You could definitely run Offensive Trick Room set with Slowbro. I've ran on in the past, and I think it's not that bad. Physical Breakers, you have Garchomp, and like even like Tauros or Passimian, I think are pretty decent breakers for the point values that they are. Really neat momentum with this team. You got Slowbro to like get slow answers in the Heatran or to Garchomp if like they bring in the Electric or Grass type on Slowbro. They bring the Grass type, you go into Heatran, teleport into Heatran. If they bring in the Electric type, teleport into Garchomp, and then just do whatever. You have Crobat with really fast U-turn, Rotom with reliable Choice Scarf, Volt Switch, Passimian with U-turn. Really neat combination there. Garchomp again weak to Grass types, Fairy types, and just I mentioned it before, just all the synergies work perfectly with this team. I think D-Ray had a Garchomp plus Heatran combination on his team, Frenzy P. So that's definitely a combo that's worked out in the past. Aromatisse, also just solid Cleric and Wish support for the rest of the team. Because Garchomp, Heatran don't have reliable recovery, same with Rotom. Aromatisse is able to pass off pretty solid wishes into both. So I like that. And these last 4 mons all fulfill a niche. Like Sinninja, you might not come to any game, but I think it's like Auto says, you want your really cheap 20-point mon to like have a niche and make your opponents prep for something. So like maybe your defensive Pokemon has to run Toxic in order to handle Sinninja, even if it's probably not going to come. If it does come, then it could just sweep your team. So like Sinninja's, I think, really cool in that regard, especially with Boots. Tauros, for the 6-point tier, like this mon like hits like a truck. It's like if you had Spike support on this team, would be even better. But like because Tauros, I feel like just sometimes just slightly misses out on 2-hit KOs, but also has really nice speed, so that could definitely work. Skuntank for Poison and Dark type, defined defensive combination there. Passimian, pretty decent bulk and good enough speed for a Scarfer to go with like Rotom, like a Volt turn combination there. So, and also has coverage to hit Fairy types that Garchomp doesn't want to handle. So yeah, this is the draft analysis. Hopefully we didn't go too long. I'd probably have like an hour or so on this. I was going to do it a little bit shorter, but I really like talking about all these teams and seeing what the potential of all these coaches can get at, and hopefully got some pretty cool games coming up. Again, make sure you check out their YouTube channel, and I think they have a Discord link that I'll provide in the video below, so definitely make sure you go check out this league. Shout out to Meme again for asking me to do this, because I love doing this type of stuff, so I'm glad to do this. And if anyone else wants me to like rate their leagues, just shoot me a Discord DM. So yeah, I'm excited for this season, but until next time, later guys.